Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here from Oilers Live, July 13th. And it's the Oilers' first day of camp today. We got Mike Dursa on with me tonight. How you doing, Mike?
Doing well. How's my man?
I'm doing just great. So it feels like forever since we've been on for a live stream, or since we've done a pod, since we've done anything that had anything to do with actual hockey. And so here we are, finally made it. First day of camp. You watch any of the video?
You know, the biggest take from today in shocking news is the Nuge's got a little stash going. It's like this.
Yes.
There's a little gap in the middle there.
I know it. There's. I don't know if there's any debate. It's quite the stash. Yeah, it's whether it's good or bad or otherwise, I don't know. I mean, that's really kind of up to everybody to decide. To me, it looks kind of awful, but I've seen some tweets about keeping Nuge's stash forever. Yeah. I mean, oh man, he did have a long time to kind of he had some time to prep for what he wanted his first day stash to look like, and that's what he opted for. So all good. Who am I to say anything bad about the Nuge? I like the guy. Yeah. So that's there was that. It was good. I mean, over these last phases, it was kind of neat to watch guys get out onto the ice and do some drills. And I can tell you that I went and played hockey last night for the first time since March 12th or 13th, I think. And it was something else. Like I felt a little bit like Bambi getting out there on the ice, and I've skated my whole life, and it just felt weird. That's the longest I've been off skates for as long as I can remember. I mean, I haven't gone. I legitimately probably have only gone 2 weeks at most, and 2 weeks feels like a long time. But I would imagine for some of these guys that didn't get a chance to skate all the time, you just start to feel different muscles that you didn't feel for a long time, no matter how much you've been working out. So kind of interesting to see. I mean, these guys are at top form, but still there's going to be some rust. There's going to be a little bit of rust. And although I didn't notice any in the video, but I suspect that's not the stuff they want to show.
Yeah, I would think just more or less passing. That's that fine touch. I think that's gonna need the sharpening more than anything. I think after a couple of skates, guys will get their legs under them, and that won't be a big issue. But it's probably gonna be a little bit here before that passing is tuned up. It might even take until the kind of second round before everything's fine tuned. Maybe I'm out to lunch on that, but I kind of think that that fine tuned passing is going to be just a little bit off for a little bit.
Well, I'm a long ways away from the skill level of these guys, but I can tell you this: I actually the hockey part of the game, I had I was in tune with, right? The where guys where it's the just the little skills. Like I missed a few passes last night that were would normally have some turns, a few little skating maneuvers. Stick handling was it felt like I was stick handling a brick, right? And
yeah.
So those little things, like really sort of tactile, the feeling of the game I still had.
When Connor's breaking down the wing and you've got the puck and you're trying to hit him, I just think it's going to be, 6 inches in front of him, 6 inches behind him. that kind of thing going on for a little bit.
Yeah, I know. You know what? I can imagine. A guy like when you're playing against a guy like Connor. Um, I think that you forget just how fast he is. Likely, right? Like I think that's the unless if you're practicing in camp with him, you just don't remember. You just know he's fast. Um, but those first couple shifts, like every first game back that Connor has, seems to be a big one. And and I think it's because you might know he's fast, but you just don't know how fast he's going to be.
Yeah, I think as D, you don't really know how far, how much respect to give him, and if you don't give him enough, you're burnt, and if you give him too much, then he's got too much time too. So
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I mean, that's the thing. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, we'll see what how guys come. One of the things tonight or today that I thought was great, Colby Cave, the little
yeah,
tribute to him as they skated out onto the ice. I think Nuge talked about it in his presser. I mean, yeah, there's something that you got to play for, right? And in this case, they've got a big something, a big someone. I have no doubt, the team's talked about it, but I think that's a nice little tribute by the Oilers to put that, we skate for Colby on there as the guys come in. Yeah. Thoughts on that, if any?
yeah. No, I mean, I think I was thinking about it the other day. If you make that a constant theme, day in, day out, it might get a little heavy. But they have to think about, their guy that would have been in the room with them. I mean, Tippett talked about it a little bit today. Um, yeah, no, I think what they did was great, and yeah, it's just a classy thing to do. I'm wondering if now, like, um, they're not going to take the ice out of there and put like an NHL logo over where the Oilers logo normally is for this whole playoff thing. Um, there was thoughts on that today, and the other thing I guess we should touch on is our boy Caleb there wasn't out with the main group today, and I forget what they're supposed to call it, but
Not fit for play, I think, is what.
yeah. So you don't know really what's going on there, and we probably won't know.
So he did. Apparently, he did skate.
On the other side,
Yeah,
so maybe
but
he's got just a little tweak or something.
yeah,
Everybody suspects that thing we're not talking about here, but if he's on the other side and he's kind of in the area, I don't think that's it. I think if you were at that point, you wouldn't be entertaining the ice. You'd be kind of in quarantine by yourself for 2 weeks. So
yeah, I think that's just it, right? Is that like they wouldn't have him out there if he had tested positive at all. So I think that I think we can safely say that it's not that, but as far as being some type of an injury of some sort, I think that's the more likely scenario.
yeah,
And you know what? We'll talk about the defense because there's some real things there. Hub City. Does he now? This is official now. Finally, Edmonton is a hub city. Oilers will be staying at the Marriott. Some teams get Sutton Place. I think that's kind of the. Yeah, I think the Marriott's the one to stay at personally, rather than Sutton. But I guess Sutton Place Hotel will likely not be a sponsor anytime soon on the pod. I mean, I think that's good. There's some familiarity there. I think a lot of the Oilers that come in and play part time, like, and that they stay at Marriott already, so they understand that. I think there is a bit of an advantage. Your thoughts on that in terms of playing at your home rink for qualifying potentially all the way up to Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I think there's a got to be a feeling for those guys when they're on that ice, a sense of normalcy. Although this whole thing is gonna seem so abnormal for any NHLer, you know, when was the last time, if ever, they played in a absolutely pretty much empty, full building other than a practice? So that it's there's going to be a difference about the whole thing, without fans in the building. I still think there's a little bit of a home ice advantage, but I don't think it's monumental. I It might help you a little bit to be at ease, but it's not like a seventh or sixth man on the ice for you, like it normally would be. But if it turned out that we met Calgary somewhere along this line and we had every home game, I think that would be better than some here, some there. Well, so
Yeah. Well, yeah. Other than, I mean, doubtful that Calgary gets past Winnipeg, so that probably won't be won't be won't be much there. We'll see, I
uh,
guess.
did you hear too? Mr. Crawford there in Chicago is was
Not fit
unfit to
for play. Yeah, unfit for play.
right, and yeah, with him it could be the thing we're not going to talk about because um, I don't think he was practicing with the group either. So
Yeah, I mean that one's interesting. It'd be. I think they rely a ton on Crawford and goaltending, right? I mean there's they've got
yeah,
some offensive firepower that can go. I'm not super keen on their defense. And so, if you don't have a guy like Crawford in net for you, then it might not be. Well, it's you know what I mean. Take out your best goalie on any team, and it's not ideal,
yeah.
right?
Malcolm Subban's a capable goalie, but he's he doesn't have Stanley Cup pedigree. So
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So next thing I thought we'd talk about is schedule. And so it looks like every they're going to play day off in between games, other than the last. If it goes to the last two, 4 and 5, they will play those on the 7th and 8th, and so be done first round by August 10th, which they'll get a day off. So they're doing all this in 10 days, the qualifying round. And they're on the first day, so August 1st. Yeah, I mean this is obviously the way that they have the schedule. I don't know, I don't know that they've said the times yet. Have they
I thought
like I mean the actual
Alex,
scheduled times of the? I know that
yeah,
they've said the times of each game, but
right. I thought Alex Thomas posted maybe yesterday or game times for us, and I thought the our first game was like a 3 o'clock in the afternoon Mountain start, and then the next two I think were 8:30 our time starts, 10:30 Eastern.
okay. So it'd be interesting because I imagine, right? I mean, they're going to want to play the Eastern games first, and then, or sorry, the Western games first, and then the Eastern games as close as they can. I mean, ideally, right? I mean, you're going to try to play the teams in the prime time wherever possible from a viewing perspective. It's still kind of interesting. I mean, how they work that out. Shout out to Mr. Glenn Ma who's listening in. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I think I mean the scheduling is interesting, right? I mean they're going to go through this couple weeks of camp, and then they're going to go right into really pretty intense schedule, right? Like 5 days, potentially for 5 games over 8 nights, right? So it should be good. I think that's when you're going to notice the. I think that's when you're really going to notice people's conditioning. You know, one of the storylines we'll get to there is Connor McDavid being in some of the best shape. Next up, Mike Greene opted out.
I'll just give you the times, and then we
Sure.
can talk
Yeah,
about winner. So on July 11th, Alex posted Game 1 is 3 p.m. Eastern, so that's 1 o'clock our time. And then they were the next Game 2 and Game 3 are 8:30 starts our time.
Both at the same time, so simul at the same time.
Yeah, that's all we know right now.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I've only seen the graphic there for the first 10 days of Stanley Cup qualifiers. That one with the dates in there, and then the round robin dates as well. I think the one thing that is interesting when you think about it, right, is there's a potential that the Oilers or somebody in the qualifying round goes 5 games. They're coming off of 5 games in 10 nights. They might get a day off, but if you're playing in the round robin, you're max 3. Could be good, could be bad either way. I mean, the playoffs are one of those things sometimes where too much of a layoff, or if it's a little bit too easy, can work against you. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out as the playoffs go on. So Mike Greene, let's talk about that, because he opted out for family reasons, which I haven't seen anything negative about it, which I'm glad, because I think that we're in uncharted territory, and as everybody says, and I think that it's great, that I think it's great that people have that option, right, to play or not to play, and I think it's great that nobody's put anything negative out there. So that's good. A lot of respect for that. It's got to be a tough decision. I mean, what would I can't say that I would turn it down. Even if I had family and everything, you're turning down what's potentially, right? Like, you don't know. I mean, if your team goes on to win the cup, you're not there, right? Like, is that something you regret as you go forward, right? Your thoughts on Mike Greene?
Yeah, I think there's. I saw something today where I think there's only 6 guys that opted out, and I know 3 of them, like Mike Greene, Travis Hamonic, and I think Sven Berchi from the Canucks. I'm not sure who the other 3 is. I know Max Domi was having a hard time trying to figure it out because he's got diabetes pretty bad. So, you know what? If I mean, if you can read Mike Greene's story about his kids and that, and on one hand, if the Oilers go on to win the Stanley Cup, probably going to have some regrets potentially. Might not even regret it. I mean, his decision is to try to keep his family safe, and for me, love the game of hockey, and love the Oilers, love to see Stanley Cups, but your family's got to be the most important thing in your life. So I wanted to see him play. I guess the selfish part of me wanted to see what he could do, because a veteran guy and with some time off probably is 100% healthy or close to, and it would have been good to have him, and we probably could have used him, but I'm not going to begrudge him for turning it down and putting his family first.
Yeah, and as he said, I mean, the good thing is nobody's done that. So I think it's good. I think it's a big loss even for the Flames to have Hamonic opt out. Again, I mean, totally understand. Maybe regret's the wrong word, right? Because you'll never regret putting your family first. But certainly, there will always be something in the back of your head. I think if your team goes off and plays
And
plays to the Stanley Cup.
do they have any clauses, like if a guy opts out but then wants to rejoin, can you do that? Or I don't even know.
My guess would be that you can't. Yeah, I mean, because you're only allowed so many players, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of that.
Yeah,
probably.
I just don't think that there's anything. So this goes. So this kind of goes to another thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, and that's defense. So at camp is Ethan Bear, awesome, Matt Benning, Bouchard, Broberg, Caleb Jones, Oscar Clefbaum, William Lagesson, Adam Larson, Darnell Nurse, and Chris Russell. So we've got the camp started today with 33 players. I believe that the roster 30 players that they can take into. I want to clarify that. So I'm going to clarify that, but Kelly from Beer League Heroes says a regular person wouldn't be allowed to opt out. They'd lose their job most likely. So it's kind of interesting. He's got a point there. But also they wouldn't ask a regular person to sequester themselves for up to, 2 months possibly, away from their family without. So it's not a regular instance by any stretch. But the NHL playoff roster size, I believe, let's just see, 28 players and unlimited goalies. So based on that, the Oilers have 33 players at roster right now, so 5 goalies, 10 D, and 18 forwards. That means no cuts. I mean, I can't see there being any cuts. You take everybody that you can. These are the guys. Where does in your mind, the Mike Greene thing play? Sorry. I'm going to go back to that comment from Kelly at Beer League. Yeah. So that's exactly somebody, I guess, commented on that in his. So there was maybe some negative comments about Mike Greene opting out, and that one was one that was on Kelly's Instagram account, and so Kelly and I, smart man Kelly, says that's what he replied. This is not a regular instance, right? Obviously. To be sequestered from your family for who knows how long while you go out and play a game. It's great. Totally 100%. There are some things that hockey players do and get that regular people don't get. But this is still, after all, it could be life altering if you get coronavirus or something, and you bring that back to your family, or for that matter, something happens with your family while you're gone. Who knows? I mean, it's a big deal. So back to the piece there about defense. Your top 6 running into the playoffs. The lines today, by the way, I didn't. Did I say Brodin on there? Because he was Broberg. Or Broberg. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. You did.
The lines today. This is from Mark Spector on D. Clefbaum and Larson together. Nurse and Bear. Russell and Benning. So a lot like what we saw during the season with Broberg and Lagesson and Bouchard sitting off. I suspect that's it. Do you think the Mike Greene thing plays a big part? I mean, we only saw him for 2 games.
Right.
When I saw the announcement, I figured there's a couple things. One is, he wasn't. I didn't think he'd get full-time minutes. I think the biggest, on that bottom six, depending, on how guys play. But that top four, Clefbaum, Larson, Nurse, and Bear, I don't think you touch that for as long as they're healthy in the playoffs. Are you surprised at all by who was invited to camp on D? Are you happy with Broberg coming out?
Yeah. No, I think they did exactly what they needed to do. And I think, with Mike Greene kind of taking himself out of the possibility of playing, that gives somebody like Evan Bouchard a possibility of seeing some time. Because I don't think Bouchard will be the first guy to join the fold. I think that's going to go to Caleb Jones. But injuries happen in a playoff run, and if it goes longer, the kid might get some time.
Yeah. So that's Kelly asked a question. Well, so a couple of questions in online. Glenn Ma asks, no Manning. Yeah, no.
Surprise.
No Manning on the roster. He did add an LOL in there, of course. And then Kelly asks, who gets in first if there's an injury on the right side, Jones or Bouchard? And you mentioned Jones. I suspect Jones is probably the likely candidate. I think Camp will have a lot to say. And also, I think a lot would depend on, in my mind, how the power play's pumping, right? Because you may bring Bouchard in if the power play is struggling a little bit. Maybe you do bring him in and try him out for a game. Here's the challenge, right? Which you're not. It's not like you're playing a season where you've got time to tune up and everything. During a season, if your power play is not going, you can bring a guy up and place him in there and see if something sticks. Yeah. But that's going to be it's going to be a tough to coach in this environment where you don't get you don't get that. Kelly asks the question: is Bouchard greater than Bear on the power play? I don't think we know, right? Yeah. I love Bouchard's shot, and
Bear can shoot the puck too. It's
Bear can shoot. Bear is definitely the better puck handler, and I I love all aspects of Bear's game. So, I think I like to see Bear on the power play. It's a good point, but I'd also love to see Bouchard's shot once in a while come out of there.
I made a joke yesterday that Mike Greene's going to really miss that 15 seconds of power play time the second unit gets.
Yeah, it's I don't think that Mike Greene is a huge loss. I think that having that kind of a veteran presence is certainly helpful. Although, having said that, there's nobody in this league that has been through this, right? And so it's not, there's no vets when it comes to coming back from pandemic and playing in a winner takes all tournament like this. With no games, no off games, right? Like there's no gimmies in this. You got no games to test something out or test out new lines. What you got is what you got, and a loss is huge in the playoffs.
The first game of this like little mini series here with Chicago is going to be a big game.
Yeah, it's like every game's the most important game of the season now. Legitimately.
It really is. If you lose, if you take a loss there, then you give Chicago belief.
Yeah.
You don't want to give them any belief.
Now, having said that, right, it's not the same as losing a real home game, right? There's a little bit of a difference there, so you don't get quite the same swing that the home games give you. But you're right, you don't. I think I'd be curious to when this is all said and done, see what the percentages are of series that are won by teams that won the first game. It might. You bring up a good point. I suspect it'll be high, maybe a little bit higher than normal. Small sample size though. So, next story up: McDavid, fitter than ever.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, I mean this is. Well, here's the one thing that I really love about that. And you're right. What does that mean? But here's the thing that I love is McDavid is anytime he's come back, he just comes back with a vengeance, right? And like this, like we're going into, I just finished saying it. We're going into new ground that nobody's ever been to, but everybody's coming back, including McDavid, right? And I mean, I just, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm expecting, and I hope that I'm not wrong, but I'm just expecting him to wow everybody at another level that we've not seen yet. And if he is, in fact, in the best shape he's ever been in, I don't know. I mean, it's those, go back to that first game. Those first couple games, watching McDavid could inspire me to, pre-print some Stanley Cup champions banners. You know what I mean? Like, depending on how he's playing. And Draisaitl, too. I mean, let's not forget Draisaitl. But McDavid coming back from anything. He just, I think Spector was talking about Iginla, how he always started out slow, right? And which he did. I mean, that was always the word on Iggy when he played the game. McDavid's the exact opposite. Everything he does is fast. He's fast right out of the gate in the regular season, right? Like it's just unbelievable. And so if he is in fact in better shape than he's ever been, and legs all healed up, watch out. I mean, it could be pretty exciting.
Did you see any clips of them on the ice today?
I watched some of the clips. I actually didn't see any with McDavid. Did you see any with him in?
No, but Leon looks like a tank.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just yeah. No,
in a good way, I hope. Yeah, looking pretty solid.
Yeah, like good luck getting the puck from the guy.
Yeah, well, that'd be good. I mean, I am pretty excited about that. Okay, next thing up. Who do you think out of the Oilers stands to have the biggest breakout performance in the playoffs?
Oof, that's a good question.
Now, when I say breakout, I mean we expect Draisaitl and McDavid to be their usual self. But who's going to? Maybe the better question is, who do you think will be the biggest surprise?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you who I'm hopeful is the biggest surprise.
Yep.
Athanasiou.
Oh yeah. All right.
Yeah. I heard today that people were there, the media guys were there, and they wanted to see what Connor was like, and they were surprised at our boy from Detroit there. I think now is the time that Darnell Nurse needs to separate himself from kind of all the naysayers and rise to the occasion and be that mean, nasty bitch to play against defensemen. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think if I had to think about though who I want to be the breakout player, you know what, I'm not worried about Athanasiou. I just think this team is I think if he happens to be that player, then this team is better for it. There's no doubt in my mind they're better for it. I mean, we had a lot of expectation around him. But the player that I think, but just let me finish. The player that I think will be, is important for me is Yamamoto. And
Okay.
if he has that breakout playoffs, then that means Draisaitl is doing Draisaitl things, right? But
Yeah.
Yamamoto's, he's got it in him to be the Pisani of this run, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, there's another guy that has a pretty good wrist shot that I heard right from the get-go was picking corners, and that's Nuge. So I'd love to see Nuge just go on a tear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think as would anybody. This team does have. When you look at the cast, you go right down the whole cast. There's a lot of players that have that chance. Glenn Ma says his surprise would be Ennis. He thinks is this year's Pisani. We should have a Pisani award. Kelly says Patrick Russell. So,
Yeah.
which you know what? Absolutely, 100%. Patrick Russell could be the guy. Like you look at this team, and I'm actually, it makes me excited because, if they can go on a long run, this is the kind of team that's got the, got lots in it. Riley on Facebook says Ennis. Yeah. And, but there's, it could be any of these guys. I mean, this is a team that's full of a lot of guys that will be looking to make a big impact. A lot of guys that have the potential to make a big impact. Some speed, a little bit of grit with guys like Archibald, right? And even, like the little guys like Archibald and Yamamoto, we've talked about them. At Island Oil, says Bear, right? Like we've got some guy. This is maybe the first time. Riley says maybe Neil again. Like this first time that we've got all of these players that you can look at and say, hey, there's guys on defense. There's guys in net. I mean, who knows what? Like nobody's saying Koskinen or Smith, right? I mean, who knows? Smith, was stellar in the playoffs last year for Calgary. Just Calgary didn't show up. Yeah. Koskinen has the chance to be, a big game player. I look up and down this roster, guys like Nygaard and Haas, right? Like, you get them going. Although I suspect they're not going to see a ton of playing time, but they come in. You said Nurse, right? And that's so. If you consider the core being McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge, Clefbaum, Larson, there's any one of those other players that could be a real surprise there, and should be. I think as Oilers fans, we should be really excited about this team and what they bring to the table. And I think this is maybe, from a season perspective, we've got Tippett in there, who I haven't had any complaints about his coaching style. There's a lot of things that we could be pretty excited about for the break. Riley says happy to have two good goalies with this schedule. That's something, right? Like, wow. I mean, that's actually one of my lists of topics for tonight is goaltending. Who do you start game one?
Yeah, I think you have like a little competition here in camp and see who is more game ready. I don't think you can go into it having your mind made up. I mean, Mike Smith has playoff experience, and Mikko I don't think has any NHL playoff experience, so that might give Mike Smith a little bit of a head start on it. But with that many games, that quickly, I don't think you can try to run one goalie all the way to the Stanley Cup. I think they're both going to see time.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot about this. As far as goaltending goes, I mean, whoever you play, right? I mean, you play the hot hand. I don't think, I think like anything, if Smith comes in, ride him until you see any reason not to, right? If Tippett decides Koskinen's ready that first game, then again, you ride the hot goalie. And I think that either goalie, for that matter, will be maybe, and maybe that's not even the philosophy. Like, we've been a 2-goalie team all year, right?
Yeah.
So keep it at that, right? Maybe like a couple games at most, and then alternate. I don't like.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Sorry. I almost think like you're going to watch these guys, and if you see them start to sag, even if you win the game and you see them start to sag, you probably start the next guy the next game.
Yeah, and why not, right? I mean, this is.
Well, they're both capable, and you kind of have to. Goalies are sometimes tough that way, and Chad and Bob can suck on this, but sometimes it's hard for them to lose the ego. I won the game, so put me in the next one. I'll recover, whatever. But it's just such like a compact, tight tournament that we're going to be running into here that I don't think you can afford to just let a goalie's ego override common sense. They're tired, they're fatigued. Put the other guy in.
Yep. Yeah. That'll be good. I think one of the nice things that I like about this is the fact that for the first time Mike Smith is going into the playoffs not having played a full season, right? So I think that he always plays better the fewer games that he plays. The question from Kelly, and I don't know the history, Tippett's history referring goalie deployment during the playoffs. It's an interesting one. I have to go and look. I think because you throw out the regular season typically in the playoffs, but there's legitimately no regular season this time around. You can't. I mean, the interesting thing is other than we had a season to see how certain players gelled together, we've got nothing to go off of here, right? Riley says we're going to crush the Hawks if Crawford's going to be out. Boris says on Facebook that's not Tippett's MO. We've seen that with Smith. Glenn says Smith wants a cup, so he'll do what he can to be a team guy to make that happen. If they alternate, that'll be fine by him. And I, when I think about this with these goalies, they've played, pretty even this season. I just finished saying the season doesn't matter, but I think they're used to that. I think that it'll be interesting. Kelly says Shaw is out too, by the way, which I didn't realize that. So the Blackhawks might come limping into this. That's interesting. Okay, next up, and this kind of all fits into the same thing. Let me read the lines as reported by Spectre, I believe, today, first day of camp. On the top line, we had RNH, McDavid, and Kassian, which we saw at the tail end of the season. The surprise, though, was Athanasiou was on the wing with Draisaitl and Yamamoto, and which I think at the end of the season where we saw Ennis there and RNH on the top line. And then on the if you go by line 1, 2, 3, I mean 1 and 2, obviously 1A, 1B would be definitely the McDavid and Draisaitl lines. Then we've got Ennis, Sheahan, and Archibald, Neal, Kara, and Chason, and then Patrick, Russell, Haas, and Nygaard. And then on D, we've got Klefbom, Larson, Nursebear, Russell, Benning, Broberg, Lagesson, and Bouchard. And Bouchard being the odd one out in that instance. I assume Jones would be in there somewhere, probably in that fourth pairing, so to speak. Where do you put, in your mind, where do you put Nuge? And then does Ennis fit into the top 6? Clearly tonight or today during camp day 1, I mean, there's going to be tons of change. But does Ennis fit into the top 6, or is this maybe Tippett trying to see if Athanasiou is the player that we expected him to be? Your thoughts so far? RNH first.
Yeah, I think you can always fall back on going to, Leon, Nuge, and Yamamoto. You know that works, so you've always got that in your back pocket. So I think he's just trying to, by putting Nuge up there with McDavid, maybe giving McDavid a little bit more firepower with him, because I think, years past it was you'd put Leon with Connor, so you had somebody to play with Connor, but then you didn't have a balanced, lineup. You had top heavy. So I think by putting Nuge up there and Athanasiou with Leon and Yams, I think he's just trying to have like two lines that just come at you with smoke, and it'll work if Athanasiou can do what he needs to do with Leon and Yamamoto. I mean, he's fast. He can skate. Um, there's rumors that he had a bit of an injury at the end of the regular season there. Don't know if it's true or not. Adjusting to a new team, sometimes that takes a little bit. Um, I think they're gonna see what it's like for probably a couple of days and shuffle some things around. The part of that lineup to me that's a little bit ugly is the fourth line there. Um, Jujhar Khaira can skate. He can play center. He's okay, but to have James Neal and Chase on there, that's the part that, it's the fourth line, and you're not going to probably see a ton of time, or maybe you call that the third line. I don't know, but I'm fine with Archibald, Shan, and who did you say? Patrick Russell?
Ennis. They had Ennis on the
Ennis.
third
Okay.
line. Yeah.
So yeah, that line's serviceable. I mean, Riley Shan impressed me. It took him a little bit of the season to kind of get going, but he's a capable guy. I've got, on the D. I mean, I think, Caleb Jones will probably see some time instead of Chris Russell, and vice versa, and Bouchard might slide in there a little bit. The rest of those guys, I mean, we know what they're all about, and they're serviceable D-men. I got no problems there. So
Yeah, I think when I think about this this line, and Nuge is obviously going to be the biggest question mark, right? Where does he fit in? I think you're 100% right. You can always go back to the Nuge, Draisaitl, Yamamoto line. I think Draisaitl and Yamamoto, though, that's you talk about putting pairs and then adding a guy in. And the nice thing about Nuge is that guy plays up and down the lineup. The only place we've never seen him play, I think, is defense, or maybe a net. I mean, he's pretty damn good defensively too, right? So, he is. He's just an all-around guy that plays smart hockey and sometimes can give you a little bit of a show, and sometimes just plays a solid game, and I love the way the guy plays, and so I like having him up there with McDavid, I think whoever you put on Draisaitl's line, Athanasiou or Ennis or whoever, right? And then, you've always got that, if you get a chance to see where Neal's at in his game, right? Is he the guy that seemed like he was going to score 50 at the beginning of the season, or is he the guy that went through that stretch where he's not scoring any? Right. And you maybe push him up with McDavid wherever you want. I think the one pair that has to stay, or even I really love the fact that Tippett had Cassian with McDavid, because I think that pair is also equally important, especially in a long, what you hope is a long playoff run, to have a guy like Cass there, and then the Draisaitl, Yamamoto, obviously Shan and Archibald, those two are great together, and then the rest of those guys. I'd interchange wherever. I mean, who knows? Khaira will be on a short leash, right? But you got a couple of guys that can fill in as needed, and then any one of those guys that gets gets really going. Riley says, "How about Nygaard?" I like Nygaard, right? I mean, he's one of those guys, right? Like if anybody, I think that bottom six, they're going to rotate in and out, right? Like it's you're going to be on a short leash down there, right? Like if you're playing there.
Well, there's things you can do to change your lineup, and it's not that complicated. You pull Bouchard off of center, you put him on wing on a different line, and then you can have Nuge centering, Neil and Chase on, and Nuge can get those guys the puck, and James Neal's a shooter. If he gets the puck, he can put it in the net.
Absolutely.
So you can do things like that. With Andrew Shaw being out of the lineup for the Blackhawks, for basically the whole playoffs. I don't know anybody else really in Chicago that can keep Cassian in check, so he's going to be able to have another San Jose type series and get your head on a swivel because he's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean the other thing to keep in mind, right? I mean, you bring up a good point, right? Like you have a little bit of wiggle room on this lineup, which is quite nice. Riley brings up Nygaard. I mean, we know he's got the speed, right? I mean, he won fastest skater in the Oilers skills comp, right? Whether or not McDavid, we know McDavid was going full tilt or not. But you could always, if you had to, you could always throw him up on the top line and see where he goes. I mean, it depends. It depends on how that looks, and as I said, right, and what you kind of talking about is Nuge can play wherever you need him. You can put him up there. In fact, I was a little bit surprised that he was as successful as he has been on the wing. I thought maybe we'd see him get tossed around a little bit more, and who knows in the playoffs how that's going to work out. The regular season is definitely a little bit different, but playing on the wing is a little bit more of a grind, and I was wondering how that would play against Nuge during the whole season. But he seemed to have held up quite well. Kelly asks, can Cassian avoid being suspended during this postseason? Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
You know what? It's probably going to be a factor for him. I think he feeds off the crowd. There ain't going to be one. So I think he'll still try to go after some guys and have the big hits, but without that crowd in the building, I just don't think the level of runs that he was taking in that 16-7 run there, I don't think they'll be there.
So here's my thought on that, because you bring that up a couple times, and I think that's a legitimate conversation to have about the crowd and how that looks. I think going into the first few games, it's going to take a little bit of something for these guys to acclimatize to being in an empty building or however. But, these guys have, while they've played for a long time in front of big crowds, they grew up playing hockey just like you and I, with 2 or 3 folks in the crowd or just the parents or whatever. And they've had some small crowd environments. I think, I think they're going to get into the groove, right? Where it's not even going to be a factor. The biggest factor will be you don't have, like when Larocque talks about, the dressing room shaking, right? In 2006 before they got out on the ice, right? You won't have that. And I think as, you won't have that level of adrenaline, but you're still going to have this, feeling of,
they know what they're playing for.
Yeah. Island Oil asked, do they get to play in exhibition games before the play-in? I believe they play one, if I'm not mistaken, if
Yeah.
not two. Is it?
I think just one.
Yeah. I'd have to. I'm fairly certain it's just one. I'd be curious though what the. I guess it says exhibition games will be played July 28th to 30th. So it'll be good. It'll be interesting to see who you play in the exhibition game. Do you play? I think that you have to. You have to play the team that you want to go in with, right? Like this is not a maybe you play one or two guys that you're unsure of, right? But I think you definitely want to. That's your chance to have a game. I don't think they've announced. Again, Island Oil asks, do we know who it is against? I don't think so. If anybody knows who the exhibition games are in the schedule, let us know. Riley says, feeling about being at home will help. I think so. I think there's something to be said about knowing your boards and knowing all the things. I mean, and just for the Oilers, there is no doubt in my mind having camp in one of the hub cities, serious advantage, right? Like they're there. They're in the bubble already, right? Like they come in acclimatized.
Are they staying?
Well, I don't think they're at the Marriott yet. Maybe they are. I don't know. But they're, they're going to get a feel for how things go. Do we know if they get to use their dressing room? I suspect not. I think that might be a little bit too far.
When they're the home team, yes.
Oh yeah, is that the rule?
I believe that's the way it is. Yeah, if they're home team, then they. But Reed Wilkins was talking about it tonight, and they don't know if they're always going to be home team or if that's going to be, every other game or what the scoop is on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go back to how they've put the schedule, it clearly shows, right? Like they're not always they'll have a definitive home and away, right? So there's so I guess if my guess is they wouldn't have the advantage of the home team dressing room if they are definitely the away team. If that's the fact, I'd be from a team coming in perspective, I would be lobbying to not have them use that dressing room at all. But that would be my as an Oilers fan, I'm like all for it, obviously, but I find that hard to believe that they'd allow them the home team dressing room because I think that's a definite advantage, right? I mean, that's your place, right? Like that's there's a lot around that, right? Everything. There's the comfort of your
definitely becomes a sense of normalcy if you're in your own room.
Yeah, absolutely. Island asks, does anybody else get to use their room? My suspicion would be if it's closed, it's closed. Nobody else will be using it. Yeah. And I don't know that for sure, but I think.
I'm thinking if the other team's home team, they just get a generic room, and I don't know that for sure either, but that's my suspicion.
Yeah. So I think you know what, that's all the pieces I had today. We're first day of camp. I'd like to be back on Thursday as usual. If there's some some news to talk about as we go down this. But we're back to hockey now. I think it's a little bit of backwards thinking to go back to think to go backwards in terms of how many live streams a week. But two was a lot to handle. And CCRHL says, when you have a chance, Mike, tell us about your big 3-point night and the huge W. Which, by the way, went back as any good rec leaguer. I went back to the stats as soon as I got home to make sure that they gave me all my points. And they counted one of my second assists. So I ended up with a 4-point night. I'm sitting at a goal and 3 assists. But to answer CCRHL, how was it to be back on rec league ice? It felt fantastic. It felt great to be back on the ice. Felt a little bit weird, but good to be back in hockey gear and feel the puck and if you're in Edmonton, CCRHL is of course got games back and the way that the leagues have put this together, it's great that they've allowed us to get back onto the ice, and for guys like you and I who don't have any bubbles or anything or or a hub city to play in, it's a good chance to get back and do some skating and feel the skating legs again. Hopefully we can get back to talking about our own hockey and the Oilerslive Cup soon enough. That'll be pretty exciting. You're saying you were thinking that the Ice Palace will do a rental. I think that would be a great place to showcase some of that 4 point a night. We'll see how long. It's a little. I think when you can only field 11 players on a team, if you don't have at least 2 points in a 6-goal performance, odds are you did something wrong, right? Yeah, I think so. That's that's pretty good. Yeah, no, I was. You know what? It was a ton of fun to be back in skating. I couldn't believe it. So, when are you back next, Mike? Do you got any ice lined up?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I want to get on the ice. I need to go for a burn, but no, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you got to get out there. It's going to feel a little bit weird. If CCRHL, if you're still watching, when did your league start, and did it start already? Let us know. We'd love to let everybody know. I know this is just kind of the weird type of hockey season that we've been having for everybody, but it's good. Thanks for listening, Island Oil. And you know what? I think we're going to call it a night tonight. It's first day of camp. I think we get back here, if you're up for it, Mike. I'm happy to have you on Thursday. Let's do Thursday. See if maybe we can get a couple other folks. I know Kelly was here. Maybe he'd like to. Maybe we could have a little bit of a back to camp panel or something.
There we go.
And if anybody is looking to play or looking to talk some hockey, let me know. Send me a message. Love to have you on and chat some hockey. CCRHL was back. They said July 2nd, going on for a couple of weeks now. So pretty exciting. It's good to be out there playing some hockey. Any last sort of thoughts? First day of camp that maybe something I missed, a storyline that I missed. Still pretty early in the hockey season, so.
It looks from I just saw glimpses of today, so it's hard to judge, but it looks like the forwards are about 2 steps ahead of the D, and hope that's the way it is against Chicago too.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if they could just stream the camp? Like, I don't think they are, but rather than
yeah.
Why do we have to, as guys that aren't carrying like a badge or accredited press, why can't we watch? CCRHL says Nuge's mustache was the storyline. Of course, we talked about that early on in the show.
We did.
Yeah. Athanasiou with dry is Kelly's big story for the night, which I think actually is pretty big. And I think, it's first day of camp, so we're going to see. It's kind of interesting to think, this is, camp is not camp. Like, there's no cuts, right? Like, normally we talk about guys getting sent down who's right. Having a good camp. We get, a couple of days before we start into the Stanley Cup playoffs, we're going to get a couple of exhibition games, right? And then, boom. Shane says Mikey's on TV. That's a big story. I assume that's a buddy of yours.
Maybe. And it's ratcheted up, like day one of camp, they're already scrimmaging. I mean, normally that's, 4 days in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's pretty cool. Kelly, again, maybe everybody's hairstyle is the story. Sheahan's beard will eclipse Nuge's mustache and Cassian's chops. I mean, we didn't even talk about Cassian's chops. We didn't talk about Cassian's days riding the hog with some of the biker boys out there, and I mean that made news. There are, lots of different little stories that are coming out. Matthews, by the way, outside of the Oilers in the league, confirmed obviously early on that he did get coronavirus, but was asymptomatic, and is back on the ice. So he's already back. Clearly not too much wrong there. In terms of that, Kelly says Tampa had 2 blue and white games planned already. I think that's, there's a lot of, this is just interesting. To me, it's kind of neat. I mean, we'll never, hopefully never have to go through this again. And this will just be one thing. Now that we're here, last question for the night. Are you feeling, sorry, I get I'm like ADD when it comes to the chat board and everybody chatting. Kelly says, are the biker boys being confirmed as security for the hub in Edmonton? That's good. Actually, that would be a good tweet, Kelly. You better tweet that one out before I beat you to it. Well, now I forget what I was going to ask. Bloody hell. Damn it. Age is creeping in. Man, age is creeping in.
Are you?
And then I got sidetracked. And yes, I remember now. You can. Are you any more aligned to the asterisk beside the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, or are you still sort of this is it? This is the Stanley Cup, and like it or not. What's the deal? Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a goalie here to argue with me, but you know what? I feel like that's, you want to. It's not the steroid era,
Yep.
So none of these guys are cheating, If more than 6 guys opted out, then you might have something to that. But you're missing 6 players through the 24 teams that have made this kind of part of it, right? And the way I look at this this is probably going to be the best playoffs. I'm still concerned that I think once everybody gets to Edmonton, then this will work. There's still a part of me that's wondering if that's actually going to happen. If all the teams are going to get there and be cleared to play. Once that part happens, I think this is going to work, and we're going to be on our way. And if we get to that point, I think we're going to see the best playoffs we've ever seen. I think the first couple of games of this, though, could be a little muddy. Like I was saying, I don't think guys' timing is going to be, like it usually is in April.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a little bit of rust to shake through. But I think you're going to have like a little bit of a situation where guys are skating faster than the players are passing to them. So things are going to be a little bit behind them. But once that catches up, this is going to be lights out. Like there's no excuses anymore. These guys have been, training for 4 months. It's not like in the 80s where they were smoking cigarettes and drinking beer the whole off season. These guys are grinding to get better.
Yeah,
they do that now. Athletes now are different than what they were in the 80s. They're grinding. They're working hard to improve. And you've given them 4 months straight to do that. And the injuries, are going to be, those nagging injuries that, usually you'll play a playoff series through in April. Well, they're going to be gone. So you're going to be fresh and ready to go and, healthy. It's Connor's going to be like he got shot out of a cannon. Like, I can't wait.
Yeah, there's, yeah. I mean, that I can't wait for that either. I think that there's, something to be said. I mean, these guys obviously different shape than they were back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. It's just they take it. It's a program from start to finish, from the time they started skating until until today. I mean, they, I never knew what dryland training was growing up,
Right.
and still really don't. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, the players are definitely different. I think there's going to be a little bit of an asterisk anyway because it's territory we've never been in. But at the same time, I could care less. It's if the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, or I'm going to cheer like the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, and I'll be just as happy, and I will lord it over everybody who wears a Flames cap ever. And I'll be as happy as I've ever been. There's a lot to be said. I think there's a lot of different interesting things that come to play that we talked about. One is you're not going to have any nights off, like any way to sort of decide. Like if your power play is not gelling from the get go, you can make adjustments, but you don't have any games to like try anything out. You got to try that out in probably the limited practices that you get. I don't even know, they must get some practice time, and that I assume they do. So you're going to have to try that out and do whatever. The other aspect though that I think is interesting is going into these qualifying rounds and these play-in rounds. You had pro scouts that would give you some sort of heads up as in terms of, you could watch some video and say, you can either go back to the regular season where I think things will change right from the regular season. It's not going to be like a regular season where, you get to decide going into a playoffs, right? Like we don't know for sure that, how a team's going to look and react. It's like the first game of the regular season for all these players, not knowing what to expect when you get on the ice. And so those little aspects are going to play a lot into that first round. I think once we get to through that first round, though, it'll be back to player day one. I'm kind of curious too about little like not so little things, but there's a lot that goes into video coaching and all these other things. Teams aren't going to have, they won't have all that equipment at their disposal. I mean, are they going to be sitting around some flat screens and I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of different things and question marks that'll have to kind of iron themselves out. Kelly says, notice everybody calling this postseason a tournament, not the playoffs, right? CCRHL says, are you concerned the Oilers have lost 3 of the last 4 heading into the playoff round? I mean, I think you take that out of the equation now.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is new territory. Asterisk or not, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy watching hockey. I've watched some of the other sports like rugby where they've had like cutouts of players or fans in the stands, Right. And to be fair, I didn't. From a viewing standpoint, it didn't make much difference to me. I think they're, from a production standpoint, they're pretty good at whether they do some type of fan track or something in the background. I suspect we'll probably even ourselves 1 or 2 games in not notice the lack of fans anymore, and it'll be back to cheering on hockey and tweeting about how shitty the reffing is and the like. Either way, asterisk or not, am I excited? Hell yeah. And does the team still get their name on the Stanley Cup? Yeah, they do. And so whether you put the asterisk or not on there, right?
I don't like the notion of that asterisk. Like, to me, that's like Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, the steroid era in baseball. That's what I think of when people say asterisk beside it. And I don't think that's what we're into here. I think it's just kind of an anomaly of a season. But it's going to be a playoff. You got to do your thing to go on, and I don't think there's any excuses anymore. Everybody's kind of coming in at the same level, and injuries shouldn't be really a factor to start, and should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I'm with you there. It should be really fun. I think the biggest thing will be how big the riot is going to be in Buffalo if Montreal gets first overall after the qualifying round and they win the draft lottery. Because if I'm a Buffalo fan right now, that's exactly how I think it's going to play out, and and I think they would be so pissed, considering, I think Montreal had a couple of games in hand, and still, right? Now they got a shot at first overall. Anyway, I think that's where we're going to end it tonight. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for all the commentary, Facebook, YouTube, everybody, and Periscope and Twitter. Thank you so much. Be back Thursday, 8:30. I'm not going to say sharp because usually it's about 8:33, 8:34, depending on when I get out of bed. Who knows? We'll be back then, hopefully with some new storylines from an exciting few days of camp, and some more to talk about. Kelly's still piping in. We're done, Kelly. I can't.
Buffalo's not even the new Edmonton.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. Everybody thinks Phoenix, right? Taylor Hall's going to be the guy that gets the first round pick. Anyway, everybody, have a really great night. Stay healthy, and we'll see you on Thursday night. Thanks for tuning in.
Oilerslive.